Do you ever just wake up and your pancreas decides not to work?
This video was formed from a live ostrich.
I don't know how else I would start this video. I have diabetes and I can't do anything without talking about it for YouTube, so I wanted to talk about my experience at the hospital, why I went, and how I ended up being diagnosed with diabetes. If you can't tell by like the sound of my voice or the sniffling of my nose that will be happening a lot in this video, I have the flu. I've had it for a couple weeks. I'm like the tail end of it now, just basically runny nose and whatever. It's not as bad anymore. What happened was I was having really bad flu symptoms. It was a couple days after I got the flu. I'm like, okay, I was home from school for a couple days, but I have to get up and I have to start being productive. So I showered and that's all I could do. I got back in bed because I felt that shitty. I couldn't pick up my room. I had a graphic design final that I had to work on. I will get to that later though. And I just plopped back in bed because I felt like ass. I felt really bad. Every time I would try to get out of bed, breathing was like very hard for me. I struggled to breathe while I was in bed, but like once I got out of bed, it was like I couldn't breathe. So I texted my dad being like, "Dad, help, I can't breathe." I'm seeing my hair in the viewfinder and it looks terrible. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. Dad runs upstairs.
Should we call 911? Are you okay?
And I'm like, I don't know, like, is it necessary? Like, do we need to call 911? I don't know. My brother decides to say, let's check her blood sugar, because my dad's a diabetic, so whenever somebody feels kind of off, that's like one of the main things we go to. My blood sugar was like skyrocketed. So my dad calls 911, explains the situation. Ambulance gets here. I explain to them what happened, like I am struggling to breathe, and they're like, do you need to go to the hospital, or like will you be okay? I don't know, should you be fine? Let's see if you can get to the kitchen, let's see if you can get downstairs, and then we'll decide if you have to go to the hospital. I got downstairs fine, but I'm like, something's off. I think I need to go to the hospital. My family like doesn't really ever go to the hospital when something's wrong. We mostly are just like, nah, it's fine. I didn't get a tattoo that says I'll be alright for nothing. I'll be good. My dad and I must have like really good instinct when it comes to, no, something's wrong. I have to go to the hospital, because when my dad had a heart attack, he was like, no, I think I need to go to the hospital. So we must have this like hunch. I don't know. I'm getting sidetracked again. So my brother was in my room with me waiting while my dad was downstairs waiting for the ambulance to get here. The people who were in the ambulance with me were like, oh, was that your boyfriend waiting with you? And I'm like, no, I'm a lesbian. That's my brother. The amount of times I said I was a lesbian that day, it was a lot, which is weird. Like a doctor would be like, is there any chance of you being pregnant? And I would be like, no, I'm a lesbian. And I mean, yeah, trans women exist, but that was not my point. I get to the hospital and my mom was there before I was. I thought my dad or my brother would end up at the hospital with me because my mom was working, but I guess my dad must have called my mom and was like, Tiffany's going to the hospital, and my mom booked it out of there. Basically, since I went for my flu shit, they were just gonna give me some Tamiflu and send me on my way. But I guess since they were told that we checked my blood sugar, they did blood work, and they were like, yeah, you have diabetes. Here's the thing, my whole life my dad has told me that diabetes is hereditary, but sometimes it like skips a generation. So he's like, you'll be good, just like, if you have kids, keep an eye on them. So I thought I was good. Anyway, when this happened, it was a Friday, so it wasn't this past Friday, but the Friday before that. I forgot to mention the new Flight Risk album came out the same day. And while I was in the hospital, I'm like, I don't really want to listen to this album that much because I don't want to associate this album with this like negative time in my life where I'm like going through this diagnosis and feeling a lot of feelings and stuff. But in turn, by doing that, I still associate that album with my diabetes diagnosis. I had already called off of work because I had the flu. So I said to my mom, do you think I'll be able to make it to work tomorrow? Because I thought I would just be staying overnight, leaving in the morning, and maybe I'd be a little late to work, but I could get there by noon, maybe 12:30. I don't know. I was scheduled noon to close. But my mom was like, are you serious? Like, are you crazy? And I just thought I was staying the night at the hospital. I thought I would be able to make it. I didn't make it. That whole Friday, I wasn't allowed to eat or drink anything. Not even water. And I was so thirsty, which made me grumpy. On top of that, obviously I was still dealing with the flu, and they wouldn't give me any of the Tamiflu because they didn't want to give me a new pill on an empty stomach. So yeah, I stayed in the ICU for a weekend, Friday and Saturday, and then I left Sunday morning. They had 2 IVs in my hands, which gives me a funny story. So I had one here. There's still a mark on my hand from where it was. And then I had the other one like right here. Sunday morning I woke up and I looked at the back of this hand and I'm like, oh, the IV is gone. Progress. And then I realized that the IV on the back of my hand was on this hand, and this IV was still there. I also had like a bunch of other wires. I felt less like a human and more like a machine. What really sucked is in order to use the bathroom, I had to ask if a nurse could help me over because all of the wires and the IVs and shit, it sucked. I don't even know why they had 2, because I know there was one that pumped insulin into me, obviously because my sugar was skyrocketing, but I don't know why there was the other one. And then sometimes they would switch out the insulin for potassium, I think. I don't know. I also had to take pills for potassium and something else, and it sucked. The pills were gross. They dissolved in your mouth before you could swallow them, and they tasted gross. This is gonna sound bad, but I'm good at swallowing pills. Like, I can take NyQuil easily, and those things are big. So I struggled to swallow those pills, and it sucked. It was terrible. I also at one point was given something that dissolved in water, because eventually I could eat and drink, but that Friday I just couldn't. I was given something that dissolved in water, and the nurse told me it was tasteless. So when I took a sip, I'm like, oh, it's spicy. The nurse was like, oh, is it like Sprite spicy or like bad spicy? And I'm like, I don't know, I've never had Sprite, but it's bad spicy. Anyway, so that was a lot. So I mentioned earlier that I had a graphic design final that I had to work on. So I was sitting in the hospital being like, I have to work on this final. I have to get this final done. Because there was an assignment on Illustrator, an assignment on Photoshop, and then a project that I had to work on. That was a lot. I didn't know if I could get it done in time for the following Tuesday, especially since I had no clue when I was coming home from the hospital. My brother let me borrow his laptop that he has. It's like a gaming laptop, I think. So I downloaded Illustrator and Photoshop on it, and I got the Illustrator part of the assignment done. And then I go into Photoshop and I start that, and it wouldn't work for some reason. It was like the disk storage is almost full or something, so I couldn't use the tool that I needed for the project. There I was stressing about having diabetes, and now I had this extra stress on top because I had the graphic design final to work on. I emailed my professor being like, hey, I'm in the hospital because I have diabetes. Is there any way I could get some sort of extension on this assignment? And she emailed me back after I finished it saying, yeah, we can work something out. So I mean, I'm glad I finished it on time, but it kind of sucked that the whole time I was in the hospital, I'm like, what if we can't work something out? What if I can't get an extension? What if I fail this class? Like I said, one of the IVs was in the back of my hand and, you know, not here, because when they were doing blood work and stuff, they had a hard time finding my veins. This isn't something that I've not heard before. I've heard this like when I was regularly getting blood work done or like getting a shot at the doctor. I have small veins. I don't know if that's a diabetic thing or if that's a me thing, but I have small veins. So they couldn't find my veins when doing blood work, which means they had to stick a needle in me a couple of times. I am not one who loves needles. Well, I mean, now that I've started giving myself insulin shots and having to test my blood sugar by pricking my finger every day, I'm getting better. I'm also getting better at, I used to have like a fear of blood. Like, I don't like looking at blood. But obviously I have to do that to check my blood sugar. So another thing that I'm getting better at because of the diabetes. Friday night, I was woken up every single hour because they had to check my blood sugar every hour. And I was also woken up for like other shit, like blood work and whatever. So like the second I would get remotely comfortable, they would come in and be like, hey Tiffany, we have to prick your finger again, or whatever. I had on Saturday night, I had this nurse who was so nice. Every time she would come in every hour to check my blood sugar, she'd be like, I'm sorry, I gotta prick your finger. Sorry for waking you up. And I'm like, girly, I didn't say this, but it's like, girly, you're just doing your job. You shouldn't have to apologize for that. I know I got terrible sleep when I was at the hospital, but it's still like not the nurse's fault. Like, you have to do that. It would have been nice if they just pricked my finger while I was asleep. If, I don't know, I could sign some sort of thing giving them my consent to poke my finger while I'm asleep. I don't know. That would have just helped. I guess like my A1C levels were at 16, which is like, you can't get worse than that. So like, if we didn't go to the hospital when we did and we didn't find this out when we did, I could have died. I think. I don't know. I don't remember the specifics about this, so I don't know if it was the A1C or if it was something different, but like, for example, I know the number was 16 and I know my dad's endocrinologist wants him to be at like 8, so not good. So in my notes, I went on a whole tangent about the food. Hospital food is disgusting. Once I was allowed to eat, I was allowed to drink water by like late Friday night, and then Saturday morning I was allowed to eat. I was sent eggs for breakfast. I don't like eggs, but I was gonna eat whatever I could to get out of there. So I tried taking a couple bites of the eggs. I think one of the nurses noticed that I was like not having a good time eating. So she was like, we can get you crackers instead. And I'm like, yes, please. And they didn't have crackers, so they brought me Cheerios instead. And it's like, I'm not complaining. I'll eat Cheerios. For breakfast on Sunday, I had yogurt and Cheerios, and I personally, like, I'm very bad with food, like, as a texture thing, so the yogurt had, like, little chunks in it, like, little chunks of strawberry, and I didn't like that, but I'm like, I have to get this down, and then I'll earn my Cheerios. I don't know, it was my motivation. Back to Saturday, though. They sent me something for lunch that looked like vomit. I had no clue what it was. I think chicken of some sort, but it looked like vomit. I refused to eat it. I'm like, I would rather stay here another day than eat this. I was allowed to like call and ask for something else. There were not any options that I liked except for mac and cheese. So I'm like, I'll take mac and cheese. They brought up the mac and cheese. It tasted like ass. It tasted really bad. I took like 3 bites to show the doctors and the nurses that I was eating, but that was it. That was all I could stomach because it tasted so bad. I had my first ever grilled cheese sandwich in the hospital. That was the first thing in a few days that I ate that tasted remotely enjoyable. Now that I eat grilled cheese sandwiches at home, that grilled cheese sandwich at the hospital was ass compared to that, but it was still something that tasted fine. I hadn't been eating much at home because the flu made me not want to eat, because I guess like the flu uses the energy that you would use to like digest food. I don't know. I did some sort of research on it, and it's like the flu makes you not want to eat. While I was in the hospital was the first time that I was hungry within like 3 days, so it sucked. The food at the hospital sucked. I was getting blood work done, I think, when I had to call to pick out what I wanted to eat the next day on Sunday. So my mom did it for me, which is great because I don't like talking on the phone. She was just rambling off foods, and I'm like, okay, I guess. So Sunday I was scheduled to have a cheeseburger for lunch, and first of all, I don't like cheeseburgers regularly, and second of all, a hospital cheeseburger, I did not. Luckily I was let out before lunch that day because my mom was like, you just have to take 1 bite, but I do not think I could stomach 1 bite of a hospital cheeseburger. I couldn't even stomach the mac and cheese, and I normally like mac and cheese. Saturday was a day full of tears. I was sick of everything. I was sick of being strapped up to machines. I was sick of a nurse coming in and out, not recognizing half of them because it was like 20 different nurses. I was sick of everything, and I just wanted to go home. I missed my pets. I missed my bed. I missed everything. So I cried a lot on Saturday. I think the nurses felt bad for me, and that was why I was let out on Sunday. Also, they knew that my dad had diabetes, so they were like, oh, well, we don't need to get an educator in here, because that was kind of the reason why they wanted to keep me, because they were trying to get a diabetes educator in there. But they're like, oh, your dad has diabetes, you'll be fine. And they didn't tell me anything. They didn't tell me how much insulin I was supposed to take every day. They didn't tell me any of that. They just gave me my prescription, which I didn't write this in my notes, but it's something I remembered. Doctor comes in, or maybe it was a nurse. It was a nurse. Nurse comes in, and he's like, I have the doctor on the phone. One of your medicines isn't at Walmart, because we normally go to Walmart for my prescriptions or any prescriptions. Where else could we send it? And I'm like, well, my parents are on their way now, which they weren't, left home like a few minutes later. We could wait for them to get here and let you know. And the doctor, or the nurse, was like, well, I have the doctor on the phone right now. Like, I need to know. So I had to call my parents. That was a little frustrating. Oh, I gotta post my B-reel. Hold on. Oh, another thing I didn't mention in my notes. So obviously, since I was getting blood work done, my tattoos were very visible. The nurses would like read this one specifically and be like, oh, everyone you thought you knew. That must have some sort of meaning. So I was able to talk to the nurses about Cemetery Sun and about Josh and how he's my vocal coach and all that. And it was like, that was great. That was one of the good things about being at the hospital. The only good thing about being at the hospital. My parents tried to surprise me with a new mattress because the one that I had a spring sticking out of it, so it literally could have cut me multiple times. And it also was like very sunken in the middle. I've had that old mattress for probably my whole life, if not a majority of it. I ruined the surprise for myself because my mom texted me like, oh, we're surprising you with something that you need. And I'm like, oh, is it diabetes related? And she's like, no, you'll see if you get to come home today. And then I looked on our Ring doorbell to see if my parents had left. I just realized I missed out a part of the story. I will tell that once I'm done telling this story. So I checked the Ring doorbell and I see my dad carrying a mattress. I'm like, oh, they got me a new mattress. So I forgot this part of the story, so I'll just tell it now. My mom stayed with me overnight on Friday, even though technically I don't think she was allowed to do that. I don't know. But then Saturday, she was like, do you want me to go home or do you want me to stay? And I was a little conflicted. I didn't know what I wanted. We had both been woken up by each other coughing, and I'm like, I think it would be better for both of us if you went home. And my mom kept making fun of me. Oh, she's kicking me out. She's kicking me out. Then Sunday, I texted her, I get to go home. And she came to see me and stayed with me until we left. So yeah, that was my hospital story, my diabetes story. I did get lots of nice messages and messages of support online, which was very nice to see, and I appreciate that a lot. Actually, I do have one more thing that I want to say. My dad got me these balloons when I came home from the hospital, and this one makes sense, right? It's just a smiley face. This one says happy birthday on it. My birthday is not until like 3 days from now. I think they like didn't have a get well soon, or I guess not get well soon because it's not something that can be treated because I have type 1 diabetes. Welcome home balloon or anything other than that I guess they didn't have. So my dad got me a happy birthday balloon. I came home that Sunday and I had a couple meltdowns of like, god damn, I have to live with this forever. But now I just feel normal about it. It's a part of my life that I can't change because my pancreas sucks. Fuck the pancreas. Me and my homies hate my pancreas. So I feel normal about it now. It's not anything that's worth having a meltdown over anymore, I guess. Like I said, I had a couple, but it's not anything worth having a meltdown over. I'm thankful and very grateful to be alive and for all the people who sent me love and support. What? I was almost done. I think I said everything that I wanted to say. If you liked this video, like it, comment down below. I don't have a prompt for you guys because this video was about diabetes. I don't know. Hit subscribe, hit the bell icon, share with your friends, all that crazy, wacky, weird, amazing, fun stuff. Thank you so much for watching, and I never know how to end these things.